So I have the distinct honor and privilege of being able to go over the Torah portion that's called Korach. It begins in Numbers 16. So I'd like it, if you can, to turn in your Bibles to Numbers 16. This is such a fantastic Torah portion. It's to me, it's like an old Western Israelite showdown, right? Between Korah and Moses and Aaron. I mean, the Torah portion is fascinating and I think rich enough to just simply read on its own, and you would probably get a lot out of it. So I intend to kind of read a lot of it with you. It's very entertaining. It's very easy to read. I think you'll glean something. As far as my teaching goes, I work off of different axioms that I've learned in Scripture, and I want to just kind of point some of these things out because I think if you're aware of these things, you will get more out of the Torah portion. So one of them is up here. I'm kind of just drawing an aerial view of the tabernacle. One of them that I think if you know this before you go into the Torah portion, you'll get much more out of it. So imagine we're looking at the tabernacle right here. This is the Holy of Holies, and this would be the holy place. Imagine this. And so you have different things inside of the tabernacle, right? In the Holy of Holies, you have the ark, right? Outside of the veil right here, you have the altar of incense. Over here to your right, you have the table of showbread. Over here to the left, you have the menorah. The tabernacle is a reconstruction of the Garden of Eden. That's what it is. And you'll notice if you go back and look into Genesis 2 verse 9, you'll see that it talks about 4 different types of trees being in the garden. It says that the Lord God caused to sprout out of the ground all different types of trees. Trees that were good for looking at, right? Trees that were good for food. It says the tree of life in the midst of the garden and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? Those are your 4 trees. So if you look inside the tabernacle, you'll see a representation of those 4 trees. The menorah, which is a big candelabra, is what? It looks like a tree, right? Jeremy said, I can grab the menorah, so I'll grab it. Here's your menorah right here. You can see it. It looks like a tree. What tree is it in the garden? It's the tree that's good to look at. The table of showbread, what kind of tree is that? This table with a bunch of bread on it, that's going to be your table, and it's going to represent your tree that's good to eat. Make sense? What's going to be the tree of life in the midst of the garden? It's going to be inside the ark. That's the Torah. That's the 10 Commandments. This is your tree of life right here. So then what then is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil inside the tabernacle? It is the altar of incense. If you know this, if you put this together, all of these stories that talk about incense, they will open up to you in a new way, and you will see new things going on in there. So not only is the tabernacle a picture of the Garden of Eden, the tabernacle is also a picture of a human body. And we've gone over this many times, so I can't explain it all right now, but I'll prove it to you later, but just accept it as an axiom for while we're going through this Torah portion. But if you'll accept the tabernacle as being a picture of the human body, the Holy of Holies at this top part would represent your head. Inside there you have the ark and the cherubim that cover it. These are the eyes. The ark is the mind. The law is written in the mind of the man, so you'll see that's the man right there. The altar of incense is going to be the mouth. It's a picture of the mouth, and I could show you numerous instances in Scripture where incense is associated with speaking and with prayers of the saints and different things like this. I'll show you that incense means prayer. It means intercession. It means the mouth. That's what the altar of incense is. So the menorah down here would be your rib cage and your spinal cord. The table of showbread would be your stomach. That's where food goes, right? Below that, in the outer court, you would have the brazen altar. The brazen laver right here, which would represent the loins of the individual, and then the altar down here would represent the feet. So if you'll just accept these as axioms as we go through this Torah portion, I'll be able to point out a few different things that I think you'll find very interesting. Number one is the incense, if we're looking at it in terms of a garden model, represents the knowledge of good and evil. Also, if you're looking at it from a human being, it points to mouth or the intercessory work of the high priest. So let's dive in. Let's see how much I can get through right here. So we'll go into number 16, and we'll just start in verse 1. What does it say? It says, Now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the sons of Pele, sons of Reuben, took men, and they rose up before Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. And they gathered themselves together against Moses and Aaron and said unto them, You take too much upon you, seeing all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Wherefore then lift ye yourselves up above the congregation of the Lord. So it starts off with this man Korah. Right? Now, we read it as a name, like as if it's Bob or Frank or something that doesn't have a meaning, but Korah actually has a meaning in Hebrew. Korah means baldness, right? So right away, you're introduced to a character who means baldness, which points to what part of the body? It points to the head, right? And you'll see this even in the New Testament. When you get to this concept where the Scripture's pointing to the head and talking about the head, oftentimes it's alluding back to something that's in the beginning, because Rosh means the beginning. So Paul in 1 Corinthians 15:47 calls Adam the first man, right? It calls him the first man. In Hebrew they say Adam Harishon, Adam the head, Adam the first man. So what I want to kind of just draw your attention to is there's going to be in this Torah portion a theme that was real similar to what we covered when I was going over the book of Romans. You're going to see people who are either under this bald head, right, Adam, the first man, or you're going to see people who are under Aaron, represented by a new man. And you're going to see the fate of both of these people depending upon which head they decide to put themselves under. So Korah kind of points back to Adam, the first man. Again, if you want to find the reference for that in the New Testament, it's 1 Corinthians 15:47. Korach also comes from the clan or I guess the family of Kohath. Kohath is one of the Levitical families. There's 4 Levitical families that surrounded the tabernacle. So you had the tabernacle right there, and that was the man. And then you had Levites right here over to the south, to the west, to the north, and down here to the east, you had Aaron and Moshe. Right? They sat right there. So if you look, Kohath over here on the south side is connected with Reuben. And you'll find that these are the main characters who are coming up together against Moses. So if you look at the tabernacle, whenever we're talking about it, whenever it's illustrated, you always look at it like you. So you talk about like this, like it's on the left side, right? Because you're looking at it. This is the left side of the man. This is the right side of the man. So you'll see everything's very sinister from the very beginning. Sinister is a Latin word that means left-handed. So everything in this story is really sinister, right? Alluding back to Kohath and Reuben. That's actually important in terms of the story and the meaning of it. It makes a difference if you understand these things. The text alluding to a left-handed event that takes place right here. So that's interesting. It's fascinating. But Kohath, his tribe, in terms of the duties that they were given, you can go back into Numbers 4. Maybe you remember this when we were going through it already. Kohath, each one of these Levites that surrounded the tabernacle had a particular duty that they were supposed to do. Kohath's job was to carry all of these instruments. So the priest would go in whenever the tabernacle was taken down, and they would cover up all of these things, like the ark and the menorah and the table and the showbread. They would cover them with curtains so that they couldn't be seen. And this tribe specifically, it says in Numbers 4, was not allowed to touch them. They were not allowed to look at them. They would carry them, right? They would carry them on staves. They couldn't even carry them on animals. But there's a specific, let's read it in Numbers 4, because it's important in terms of what's going on right here. So in Numbers 4, I just want to point it out right here. Talking about the tribe the family of Kohath, and what they are to do. In Numbers 4:15 it says, And when Aaron and his sons have made an end of covering the sanctuary and all the vessels of the sanctuary, as the camp is to set forward, after that the sons of Kohath shall come and bear it. They're going to carry it. But they shall not touch any of the holy things, lest they die. These things are the burden of the sons of Kohath and the tabernacle of the congregation. Now skip to verse 17. Look what it specifically says right here. And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, Cut ye not off the tribe of the families of the Kohathites from among the Levites, but thus do unto them, that they may live and not die when they approach unto the most holy things. Aaron and his sons shall go in and appoint them, every one to his service and to his burden. But they shall not go in to see when the holy things are covered, lest they die, right? So can you all think of any other story where it's specifically talking about like, hey, make sure you don't go and touch this. If we touch it, we're going to die, right? I mean, that's Genesis chapter 3, right? That's what the woman is saying to the serpent. So again, you have echoes all the way back here with this tribe linking you back to Adam and the story. And what Korah and all these people are doing is they want to go in. They want to touch it. They want to have the one thing that God told them they weren't allowed to have. So let's go back into Numbers 16 and read through some of these verses. So they rise up, 250 princes, right? Why the number 250? In Gematria, 250, you could get the word Mari, which is used later in the chapter. I think it's Numbers 17:10, right? It means the rebels, right? So this number 250 alludes to rebellion. It alludes back to rebellion in Genesis, where the term is first used. In Genesis 13, it equals 250. Also rebellion in Numbers 17:10. Where we'll get to it, but it means rebellion. Anyhow, the number's important. It points to something Moses is alluding you into. These are rebels, right? They're coming up against. They gather themselves together against Moses and Aaron, and they said to them, "You take too much upon you, seeing all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Wherefore then lift ye yourself up above the congregation." So this right here is the facade, right, that they have. It's the front. Korah is coming up to Moses and Aaron and saying, "How is it that you've exalted yourselves above all the congregation when all the congregation is holy? Of course, we're all holy. Why do you get to do things like go up and offer the incense or go into the Holy of Holies?" And so they put this front on there like what they want is really equality amongst all people. But in reality, they actually just want the priesthood, right? And that happens a lot. I mean, you see this even now. People use equality. Oh, we want equality. No, what you really probably want is power, right? You want to be the ones in charge. And so we see this even taking place in this Torah portion. But it says, when Moses heard it, after he heard Korah say, "You take too much upon you. Everyone's holy. Why do you lift up yourself above the congregation?" Look at how brilliant Moses is. It says, and when Moses heard it, he fell upon his face, right? Right then. That's good leadership. Generally if somebody's really proud and lifted up, and somebody attacks them on this, the first thing they're going to do is probably not fall immediately on their face and show that what you're saying is baseless and not true. I've not lifted myself up, which is going to be Moses' point. God was the one that elevated Moses up to the position that he had, as well as Aaron. But he falls upon his face and shows them, hey, your claim is baseless. And it says, and he spake unto Korah and unto all his company, saying, even tomorrow the Lord will show who are his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near unto him. Even him who he hath chosen will he cause to come near unto him. And so what we have really right here is an attack upon God's sovereignty and God's choice and God's freedom. God has the right and the privilege and the ability to set up hierarchical systems, and he does. He does. Look at your own body, right? You are a hierarchical system, right? Your head is more important than your feet, right? It's all the body, but certain things are elevated up for different positions in order to be able to perform necessary functions for the whole, right? And these people fight against it. They fight against hierarchy, and we ought to learn too, if you're in a family, that's a hierarchical structure. God made that structure, right? In a church, it's a hierarchical structure. God made that structure. If you attack that structure, it's rebellion, right? Because you're going against God in his order in the way that he has set things up, and that's what Korah's doing right here. But Moses tells them, okay, you want to fight? You want to have a showdown? This is what I want you to do. Verse 6. This do, take you censers, Korah, and all his company, and put fire therein, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord doth choose, he shall be holy. You take too much upon you, you sons of Levi, right? This whole chapter is so brilliant how it's written. Remember, that's the first thing that Korah said to him. You take too much upon you, Moses. Moses turns out and says, no, you're taking too much upon you. You're reaching for something that's not granted to you. But if you want to have this fight, go ahead. Get your censer, because it's all about this. It's all about the incense, what Aaron had the privilege to do, which was offer the incense. Go ahead and get your censer, and you offer it before the Lord, and let's see who it picks. But you remember the last time it happened when somebody tried to offer up incense before the Lord and it wasn't commanded, right? With Nadab and Abihu, fire came down, boom, ate them up. Moses knows the outcome of this story. You want to play this game? Fine, we'll see what happens, okay? It says, and Moses said unto Korah, hear I pray you, you sons of Levi, Seemeth it a small thing unto you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation, and to minister unto them? And he hath brought thee near unto him, and all thy brethren, sons of Levi, with thee, and seek thee the priesthood also. Right? So this is another thing. Well, I probably don't have time to go into it all, but you could take it to heart, right? How often is it that we look at the position that God has put us in life, and it seems like a small thing to us. I wish I was up here. I wish I had this. And we're not grateful for all the things that we have. And in reality, this family, the Kohathites, they were already exalted above the people. They were already Levites. They had access to the service down here. They got to sacrifice. They got to receive tithes. They got to do all of these different things. They were exalted, just like Adam in the beginning. Remember, he had everything, did he not? He had access to all of these trees, but there's one thing he couldn't have, which is what the high priest could have, which is what? That's the knowledge of good and evil, right? That's what it is. He wanted to reach for that office. He wanted to reach for the incense. He wanted to do this. Moses says, fine, you want to know what's going to happen to you? Same thing that happened to Nadab and Abihu, which is a retelling of the garden story, and it's the same thing that happened to Adam in the beginning. It's the exact same picture. So what happens? That's what's going on with Korah. We see that they want the priesthood. But what about Dathan and Abiram? Verse 12. It says, and Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, which said, we will not come up. Is it a small thing? You see how he's quoting Moses again? Moses, you have Korah quoting something. You take too much upon you. And then Moses uses those words. And now Moses had used the words. Is it a small thing to you that God has elevated you? And now Dathan and Abiram use that same language back at him. This is also brilliantly written. The whole Torah portion is fantastic. So what's going on? He says, is it a small thing, Moses, that you brought us up out of the land that flows with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, except you altogether make yourself a prince over us? Moreover, you have not brought us into a land that flows with milk and honey, or given us an inheritance of field and vineyards. Will you then put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. So here you have some foreshadowing. What's going to happen to these people is the ground's going to open up, swallow them, and eat them. And they're telling Moses, we're not coming up. You aren't coming up. You're right. You're going down in this story is what's going to happen. But can you hear what they're saying? They're accusing Moses. Is it a small thing that you took us out of the land flowing with milk and honey? What are they referring back to? Egypt, right? They've gotten so warped and twisted at this point in time, right? In rebellion and in bitterness, that they even are looking back upon servitude and slavery as a good thing, as opposed to submitting to God's order. I'd rather go back into the chaos of Egypt than be underneath you, Moses, and do this. What are you going to do, Moses? Put out our eyes? What's he really saying? He's saying, will you make us blind to this reality that you're doing this, that you're setting yourself a king over us, that you've brought us into the wilderness to die? Moses didn't bring them into the wilderness to die. They're dying in the wilderness because they rejected God. They rejected the good land. That's why they're dying. But again, what do we like to do? Oh, it's not my fault. We like to blame other people for our own problems, don't we? Let's keep going. I'm going to have to go through some of this a little quickly. Maybe I can just summarize and point out, because I want to get to one major point, and then maybe we can midrash and talk about this later on, because there's so much going on in here. So basically, Moses tells them, look, I have not done anything to you. I've not harmed you. I've not took anything from you. He says, I haven't taken one ass from you. All right, let's get our incense and let's get our censers together, and we're going to go up and see what happens, right? And so they come up and they show up to the tabernacle the next day. The glory of the Lord appears. Boom, God's there. All right, let's offer the incense. When God shows up, he tells Moses and Aaron, get away from the congregation. I'm about to consume them all. But what does Moses pray in verse 22? It says, and they fell upon their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and will you be angry with all the congregation? Do you hear that Romans 5:12 quote, like we went over it, remember? It says, because of one man's sin, death came upon all people. This is, all of these concepts that Paul's using in Romans are rooted, a lot of them are rooted even in this very Torah portion. And so Moses prays, don't kill everyone. And so God says, okay, fine, get up. Get away from these men. And so everybody departs and gets away from the congregation. He tells them, don't touch anything of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins. Again, touching and eating, these are Genesis words. So they get away from Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And Dathan and Abiram come out in their tents with their wives and their children. And Moses says, hereby you're going to know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, and that I have not done them of my own mind. If these men die the common death of all men, or they be visited after the visitation of all men, then the Lord hath not sent me. But if the Lord, in the literal in the Hebrew, it's so beautiful. But if the Lord create a creature, and the earth open her mouth and swallow them up, and all that appertains to them, and they go down alive into Sheol, then you shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. So we learn, right, that attacking God's leaders is the same thing as attacking the Lord, right? You want to attack your husband, right? You realize what position these people stand in, right? I mean, even in the book of Jude, it says that Michael, the archangel, won't say a harsh word against Satan, but said, the Lord rebuke you, right? I mean, even there, because Michael recognizes authority in place. So if this is true, if the greatest of all angelic beings will not go against God's authority and permission to even personally rebuke the lowest angelic being, then what does that say to us in this mid-range, right? Just contemplate and think about that a little bit. What happens is after they go and all these men are offering their censers, the earth opens up, it swallows Dathan and Abiram and all that belonged to him, it goes down. You have the fire of God come out and consume all of these 250 men that are offering their incense before God, totally get wiped out. And what does God say to do? He says, go out there, Moses, actually tells Eleazar, go out there, Eleazar, get the coals from off their incense and scatter them, right? And get their censers and use them because it was offered before the Lord. It's holy. And this is a really profound, deep thought. You know, it's possible for God to take what you do for him and not you. It's possible for him to take your service and use it and in the end reject you. And that's, I think, really worth considering. So they take these censers and they use them, they beat them out, they make broad plates before the altar. So in verse 40 it says these broad plates are going to be a memorial to the children of Israel, so that no stranger which is not of the seed of Aaron is going to come near to offer before the Lord, so that they won't be like Korah and his company, as the Lord said to him by the hand of Moses. So that's what happened. So the next day, all the children of Israel are distraught. You think they would learn it. You get a repeat of nearly the same story. They come out against Moses and Aaron, and what do they say? They say, you've killed the people of the Lord. You've done this. And guess what? God's fed up again. Now the glory appears. God says, get away. I'm about to wipe out all of the congregation. Moses and Aaron fall on their face again. It's a repeat of the story. It's running in parallel. What do? They cry out to God, God, don't do this. Moses tells Aaron, go and get the incense, right, from off the altar and run into the camp because a plague is taking place right now. Aaron, this old man, he runs into the tabernacle. He gets incense. He's running out. Remember, he's the high priest. What does the incense represent? It represents his intercession, his prayers. He runs out. You can see death just going through the camp. It ends up killing 14,700 people. Finally, Aaron gets ahead of the destruction with that incense. And behind him on one side are all the dead. And behind him on this side are all the living. So what's the point of the whole Torah portion? Where you stand in relationship to God's priest determines life or death, right? That's it. Where you stand in relationship to the intercession of God's high priest determines life or death. And so we see that all these men died because of one man, Korah, and all of these other people lived because of the action of one man, Aaron. But Yeshua said that if you would have read Moses and believed him, you would know that he wrote about me. He was talking about me. So this is all really for us about the intercession of the high priest of Yeshua the Messiah, and how it's where we stand in relationship to him, whether we stand on this side of him or this side of him, that's life and death. That's why, again, it's a story about the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's about life and death. The writer of Hebrews ends up saying to us, he says, look, you're babies. I want to feed you with milk. I want to feed you with meat, but I can only feed you with milk, right? And what he's talking about in feeding them with meat is the high priestly work of Christ. And he says, meat belongs to those whose senses are exercised to discern both good and evil. Again, it's a high priestly term and connection. So last thing, I'm going to make this super short. So we get into number 17, and what do we see? We see God says, I'm going to stop all of this bickering once and for all, and I'm going to show you who is going to be the high priest and what the sign is going to be. He says, get all the heads of the people together and have them write their names on their staff. What is a staff? It's a piece of wood, right? Where'd they get that wood? From a living tree, right? But is it a living tree anymore? No, now it's a dead tree. They say, write your names and the names of your fathers upon the staff. In the tribe of Levi, write Aaron upon it. And leave those staffs before me, and we'll see what happens in the morning. So they put these dead staffs before the Lord. And what happens to Aaron's staff? It comes to life. It begins to bloom and blossom and produce almonds, right? And so we see what is the sign that shows you this person is the high priest of God. It's resurrection. It's life from the dead. And so I think that's all I can get into. I've already overdone it, but all right.